Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this session that we have as part of the Fair Education Impact Festival today on this very glorious sunny Friday. My name is Siwan and I am the head of the Scaling Award for the Fair Education Alliance, and I'll be supporting the session this morning alongside my colleague Tish, who is the head of the Entrepreneurship Award and is supporting with tech this morning. A huge welcome to this session on working with schools and other channels to support young people. We are really delighted to be joined today by James from Ormiston Trust and Ndidi from UK Youth, who are going to be leading this session this morning. We're really excited to have you here at the Impact Festival, which is taking place until the 29th of April, so that's next week. So please do tweet about the event and all of the interesting things that you hear, the conversations that you have with peers, etc., using hashtag Impact Festival and tagging the @_FEA. So just before we kick off with the session, I want to share a very brief intro to the Fair Education Alliance and to the two awards that we have open for applications. So as most of you know, the Fair Education Alliance exists because we believe that no child's educational success is limited by their socioeconomic background. The FEA is a coalition of over 200 organisations across the business, education and charity sectors, collectively working to make education fair in England. Now, in addition to our collective action and policy work, we also run 3 award programmes to nurture and scale impactful solutions to end educational inequality. 2 of these award programmes are currently open for applications until the 18th of May. So we really encourage you to consider applying, whether you're a member of the FEA that is interested in the Entrepreneurship Award, or a member of the public who is an early stage entrepreneur who's interested in the Innovation Award. Both awards give up to £15,000 of salary contribution and a year of support for anyone who has an idea to make education fair. So FEA members can apply for the Entrepreneurship Award, that's to support innovation within an organisation, and all members of the public can apply for the Innovation Award, which is for early stage innovators to turn a great idea into a thriving initiative. You'll be able to hear a lot more about the awards during the festival, with some specific sessions on my screen currently, where you can hear from the current portfolio of 10 award winners as they share their experiences. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. And we are going to, before I hand over to Ndidi and to James, we're going to split off into small breakouts just to have an opportunity to meet other people who are joining us for the session this morning and to discuss a question that's going to kick off the topic for this morning. So when you go into your breakouts, we'd love you to introduce yourself and your organisations briefly and discuss the following question. So what are the key components of your organisation's sales and marketing approach to schools? Tisha's going to drop that into the chat so that you have it to go with you into your rooms. If you have any issues when you are in your breakouts, there's a call for help button. Please do utilise that to call one of us in and we'll be able to sort any tech or issues or anything else. So, without further ado, we will send you into breakout rooms and look forward to seeing you when you come back from your discussions. Welcome back, everyone. We hope you had some interesting conversations in your room to kick off your Friday morning. It's my pleasure now to hand over to Ndidi and James, who are going to really get this session started this morning. So over to you guys.
Well, Ndidi, all our preparation and we didn't agree who would go first. Would you like to introduce yourself first?
Hi everyone, morning and welcome to this session. I know James and I are super excited to get to talk to you about this. So first of all, let me just introduce myself. So I'm Ndidi Okezie. I am the CEO of a national youth charity called UK Youth. UK Youth works on a national level right across the UK. We have about 8,000 youth organisations that are part of our networks. They collectively work with about 4 million young people. And we are primarily focused on utilising the discipline of youth work to support young people with the skills, development and experiences to kind of navigate life with. So really excited to be able to talk to you more about that. I think it's fair to say I was shaped and sharpened in the education world. So I'm a trained teacher, school leader. I've been an executive director at Teach First for 6 years, and just before this job, I was working at Pearson, who, for those who are familiar with EdXL, are obviously the people behind that. So I feel like actually I'm a newbie in this world, and I'm kind of really steeped in understanding the formal education world. But that's why I'm now really passionate about the bridge between those two areas, because I've kind of viscerally seen the missed opportunities that we have. So yeah, I'm excited to tell you a bit more about that. That's me. Over to you.
Thank you. So I'm James Murray. I run the Ormiston Trust. We set up various multi-academy trusts over the last 15 years, a total of 50 schools within 3 different multi-academy trusts. They have their own CEOs, exec team, board of trustees. My team, Ormiston Trust, because we set them up, have a governance oversight, a power over those mats, and their trustees at a very strategic level. But apart from that governance role, we're a grant maker, and we've funded work in schools now for 15 years or so, around areas to do with resilience, the well-being, the social emotional skills, the arts, sports, pretty much everything other than perhaps the core curriculum. And so we often engage with organizations, maybe a couple of hundred that I've met over the last 6 or 7 years, who we then sometimes introduce to individual schools, Matt head office, where we feel there might be a good fit. So I'm desperate for our network to have the fresh thinking that so many of you bring to education settings, and so delighted to run with Ndidi a short session on this. I think we've got an agenda that we might put up just to frame what we're thinking. I think just to touch on that, with we've got relatively short time today. I'll just fly through that. We're going to have a head teacher join us, but unfortunately through pressures, and of course this is one of the points we might talk about, the pressures on head teachers, he's had to apologize and can't make it. But I did manage to record a 20-minute video with him on Wednesday, actually, where we tried to cover off some of the points that might be his personal reflections as a key decision maker in the system. So I think we're going to play that. I think maybe just touch on a few points after that video, and then I think Ndidi is going to explore what are very powerful routes to engage young people within youth centres, and around the community, basically outside schools. Schools are very much only just one place to reach young people. And I think we'll go into breakout rooms. We're just still refining that, but I think there'll be a session on maybe refining your elevator pitch, maybe looking at your marketing sales strategy overall, and then we'll come back, have a little bit of feedback session, and wrap up at about 10:50, 10:55. But Ndidi, how does that sound? Is that still a sensible approach?
Yeah, sounds good. I think we're really keen to engage you guys. So I think rather than people just listening, I really hope people are up for quite an active, engaging session. So we're going to give you some stimulus material and then kind of break out so we can really engage and talk to each other as well. I always find that that's the most useful thing, actually, when you're in these breakout forums. So yeah, that's it. So if you kick off on that bit, James.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, saying that, we are going to play a video. It did turn out to be 20 minutes. But I think let's just crack on, get that video out the way, talk about some points afterwards. So Tisha, maybe you could play the video, please.
Thank you, James. I'm Mark Ross. I'm Principal at Ormiston Park Academy in Thurrock, newly appointed from September 2020. So my first foray with Ormiston Trust. I've been in education quite a long time, 25 years now probably, across a range of schools, predominantly in Croydon in South London, working for a couple of big academy trusts within Croydon, and then moved latterly for the last 4 years to head up my own all-through school in West Sussex, which was an interesting experience. So I've got quite a bit of experience with working with outside agencies for impact for kids, for life chances. Now, I'm all about aspiration. Ormiston Trust and Ormiston Academies all about aspiration and life chances and working with children in a slightly different way to some trusts. So wherever we can get an outside influence, which is really, really positive, I'll try and grab those, because the kids tend to respond really well to outside speakers, and if they're really, really good.
Fantastic. Maybe just describe a little bit about OPA and the school's context, where you are.
Yeah, currently Ormiston Park Academy is in Aveling, Thurrock. It's a kind of a small secondary school, 750 PAN, mixed demographic, in quite a, could be called contextually deprived area. I call it the sleeping giant in the area. Now, we've got huge potential, fantastic facilities, kids are great, staff are great, we've got a community on our doorstep, and it's we're on a journey to become the school of choice within the area. So again, the things that we can put on, in place in the school, obviously really, very important, but also the outside influence and seeing the greater world, and so on, and cultural capital, is really, really important, for the kids to see new and different exciting things, to make their world a bigger place than just a local area, is really important for us.
Fantastic. And I think also just received the finance minutes yesterday. The budgets are tight in the education system generally, and I think there's context as well. COVID at the moment is a very annoying distraction, to say the least, in the education system. That must make it, before we really get on to the heart of this, but it must make it difficult to look externally a little bit at the moment.
Yeah, no, I agree, James. It's for us in the school, it's great to get the kids back on site. Now we've got some kind of normality. I've looked out earlier. We've got some people doing, some kids doing sport, and we're trying to get up and running as quickly as possible with everything that we can offer. And again, we spoke prior, we're going to speak a little bit now in terms of the things that we've done quite recently to get kids' experiences of different things. And I think it's really, really important, and the agencies out there can offer a lot. So I think for schools in this position, normality, giving students and children and young people opportunities are really important now more than ever than before. So yeah, we'll talk about that in a few minutes, I think. Yeah,
great point. I totally agree. And so I suppose moving on to the heart of the chat then is the topics I thought we could cover, just in terms of how, using a couple of examples you might have, how did you engage? How did you come across interesting groups? How did they come across you and connect well? And what might have been on your mind when you were looking to sort of secure their services, and then maybe how did they sort of maintain your interest? But just starting initially, are there one or two examples of how do you come across interesting groups? How have you come across interesting groups in the past to help you at schools?
Yeah, there's a range of ways. Some be cold calling or marketing via your emails, which is fine. You look at them, you assess them. Does this look appropriate for the school context at the moment? So that's quite a difficult way of an into a school, because you get so many of them, and some stand out, maybe because the way it's written, or maybe the presentation, or maybe you know of them in the past. So they stand out in that way. In other ways, I've had people come and pitch that they've kind of been quite insistent, and they've made contact with me or other people in this school on a personal level via telephone conversation or virtual conversation, and they've pitched what they want to do and how they want to do it. That's more interesting. in some way. So then you have a live conversation with them and they pitch. Other ones are networking and word of mouth in regard to head teachers groups or deputy head teachers groups or forums that they've had experience of a good provider, a good agency that have come in and really will recommend it for schools. So that's word of mouth is really powerful. Once you have it's got to link with what you need, your school context, and a lot of things are really, really good, but not particularly needed at that particular moment in time. So you may remember them and bring them back when you need them. It's the things that you need at the moment, which kind of hit a vein, and you go with ones.
I think there's definitely an element of luck here we shouldn't ignore, Mark, isn't there? I think there's some fantastic services out there, but often it's a timing issue. It's just not quite right for you. And I think another thing you mentioned there, which is interesting, is that word insistence. And I think there's a balance, isn't there, with that pushy approach. I mean, I have engaged with many hundreds of groups over the last 10 years in this way. And there's a balance between passion and desire to get that conversation from someone and a kind of overdoing it, which I think we're all aware of. And actually, just finally, there's also when I think about agencies trying to get en masse into the education sector, I think networking is incredibly powerful, but I think they're also always going to have to engage in this email marketing sort of direct marketing approach. And it's so easy for an email to look sloppy, or for that initial communication to just not maybe provide the right sense that you're listening, want to engage in a partnership, and being too pushy to a degree. So there's, I think, some important things there. I just want to talk about free trial. Before this chat, we also talked about groups fundraising to bring the cost of their services down. I suppose we might as well just get straight into this question of cost. There's a lot of pressures on school budgets, and the provider's got to really prove that they're going to add value. And I think touching on free trials is where they can sort of demonstrate their value over the course of a day to get your interest. How do you see that dynamic working?
No, I agree, and I think probably that's a really good way to go. Just going back slightly, James, in regard to MAT and trust and federations and things like that, a good example of one of the previous organisations I worked for. They got together a group of young entrepreneurs with brilliant ideas about how to have an impact with students, and these individuals, these groups, came in and pitched to schools, and it was a smorgasbord of different types of inputs, and we said, we want this one. Can they come in for a day just to present live? When you see the person, you know what kind of impact they'll have with kids, and that was really impactful for us. We could see them live. We only had a certain amount of money. We thought about three or four different areas that we could look to, and then we chose the one which fitted us for that day. So there's a little bit of effort in that, and you're not always going to win every pitch. And it's like it's pitching to the head of the deputy or the bursar, the impact. That was really helpful. I think MATs and trusts and federations have a big power in terms of not sorting, but having a list of approved suppliers, agencies that would do this, and this. So before even the email comes through, you've got an approved list of, say, 10, 15 different suppliers that can offer a different range of inputs to schools. So they've been approved. Myself as a head teacher principal would say that I'm looking for this, and potentially that they would have that connection, that network straight away. So I think there's a big in there for external agencies. In terms of trials, yes, I can't remember having a free trial, but I think that would be very beneficial for schools. But again, it's the personality click, it's the context of the school at that particular moment of time, and how you think that person would deliver with the types of kids that you want them to work with. You can only see that when you see them live, either virtual or sometimes on a phone call, but more so live when they talk to you. I think that's really, really important.
I think there is, definitely some great power in that. Just another thing you touched on made me think about the fresh perspectives idea, and I think there are some. I think that's balanced with this other priority I often look for in a group, which is in a way putting themselves out of business. I think there are some groups where really trying to pin down how they are transferring that capability into a school, because effectively, for a school to put itself in a position where they're going to pay £1,000, £2,000, £3,000 every year for the foreseeable future, that's not a terribly attractive offer. I think that transfer of skills is important, but at the same time, I think something you touched on there, sometimes people coming from outside a school system can offer those fresh perspectives. They can connect with young people in a way that perhaps your staff would find it more difficult, because the other part of their job in some regards is sitting in front of and running the classroom. So I think there's a balance there between those two as well, isn't there?
I think if I can use the model that springs to mind, James, if I can mention a name, is that okay to mention a name in this forum?
So.
Or
Yeah, I think as long as it's a positive mention, I think we're
The example I've got there in terms of I've worked with Humanitopia in probably 3 different schools. Humanitopia are an established company now, which provide leadership development opportunities for students and staff. They do staff meetings and CPD for staff as well, but mainly for students. It started as a summer school program when government were offering financial incentives to run summer school transition between year 6 and year 7. And why they're so successful is that they have really good people working for them. That's one thing, and that they're the people that get on with kids, and kids get them. They're young people who kids aspire to be like in lots of ways. So they're different to the teachers in schools or the leaders in schools, that they have that unique selling point. But also they set up in a way that the kids feel ownership of the projects they're running. And initially you need to spend that money to get that input, that maximum input and output for the program you're running. It could be a 3-day transition or a week transition. For me, for the first time I worked with them, it was a 2-week transition. And the thing that they did really well was they were receptive to my desires, my needs for the school, and adapted the programs to suit what we needed. And I don't think they had, at that point, they hadn't run a 2-week program, but I had the funding to run it, and I wanted to run a 2-week program. So that was really helpful, being adaptive and reflective and supporting the school need. So agencies perhaps need to bend and be flexible in some ways to hit the needs of the kids and the content at that time. The second thing was, in terms of keeping the momentum going, the idea Humanitopia had at the time was to hopefully make the school self-sufficient in running the programs, which is quite a big ask, because you need staff on board to run or replicate the same way. And I think potentially if you've got staff members like that, you can replicate and kind of put them out of business to some extent. But they said that outright. And this is what we'll do first year. The second year we'll do less, and third year you run it yourself. And that was kind of the model they worked to. So you weren't kind of being taken advantage of. And I think over time, the input still needs to be there by the outside organisation. The kids want to see them, but you can run it to a less extent with the outside agency as you go year 2, year 3, and be self-sufficient really if you have the staff on board to do that. So that model was really, really good and really helpful, and they've been so good with every student that they've come across. So that's the model that works.
Yeah, and I
for
think
me.
When we talk about putting themselves out of business, I think hopefully people will understand what that means. And I think that also means that Humanitopia, in this example, could finish their provision over 3 years, but then there's something new, extra, different. It's not that I think that providers can offer. I think just
sorry, we still ran the program. They're still part of the program, and we didn't get to the point of year 3, 4. I kind of moved on to a different venture from that point. So I don't know how it materialised, but within those year 1, year 2, year 3, they came back and did some mentoring with the kids. So the image and the brand of Humanitopia was still within the school. The impact was still within the school. The students talked very highly of them when Ofsted came in. That was quite a big personal development outcome for the school, because kids talked about the programs that they'd been on, and we carried that going year 2 and year 3. It wasn't just the summer school. So in terms of deviating slightly and being flexible and still having the in with the school, still generating income for the agency, that was there, but it was a slightly different way of doing it because we had different needs then, and we could run the program to some extent ourselves.
Yeah, and maybe moving on to another couple of areas, I think, but actually just touching on your point about the Multiacademy Trust head office that in Ormiston Academy Trust sits in Birmingham. I think, you know, there is an increasing desire for the head office function to conduct that due diligence of more and more groups so that the individual schools have a sort of assurance. And I think there is something about contacting, probably even in our example, the head office and local schools is probably what I would say at the moment. Because I think you, Mark, have got, you know, the majority of the decision, I think, when what affects your school. But I do think the MAT head office has a role there, and may sometimes strongly suggest suppliers that it thinks that they've got a powerful offer. And I think that has been confusing for some providers. I think the academy system is, what, 15 years old, but it's still, some of the dynamics and the hierarchies are a little bit confusing to others. But I think, you know, the head office and your relationship, I know that they've suggested you use things. I think there are probably one or two suppliers they've said, actually, Mark, look, you really need to use this because we've got a national contract. But then I think a lot of that decision-making power still is in your hands. How do you see that, Mark, without being, you know, too controversial to our you know, head office colleagues who are not on the call?
No, I absolutely agree, James. I think that is fundamental. That takes the legwork out of sourcing things that you need, but also for the agencies outside. They know they've pitched and they will be successful if they go to schools, and it's just like a library of different activities. I think that's definitely the way forward for the bigger trusts, to do that due diligence and have a set of performers, or whatever wording you want to use, that could come into schools if needed. I think for schools that would be beneficial, not just because of the groundwork's being done, but also because there's go-to straight away. You don't have to look too hard for it. There's a range of activities available, and also maybe you get a slightly better deal if the trust have maybe commission them in some way to as a retainer, and then the schools pay from their budgets what they need. It may, with a greater pool of schools within that have a substantial gain for the individual schools. I think it'd be very beneficial.
So perhaps as we look at the end of this chat, I think we've talked about that connections that they're making, the networking, the direct marketing, the trials. I think the alignment with needs and perhaps your local context, but then also that sense of the offer itself, the putting yourself out of business, adapting your offer, transferring those skills. I think there's national and local connections we've talked about. I think alignment with Ofsted's priorities is important to school systems, as you've mentioned. They are an incredibly important stakeholder, we're accountable to them as well as our the MAT head office executive. I wonder, just moving towards the end, are there any other key points here, Mark, that looking forward? I think we've talked about, for instance, coming back to human utopia. I think there is something, their national size, I think their age, I think their profile, I think is, they've reached that critical mass to be able to get on, I think, national radar. I think a lot of the groups as part of the network of the Fair Education Alliance are relatively small and trying to take that step up. And I think it's, there's some, it can take years to get to that, obviously, that national, level of profile and credibility to have that door open easily. But any final thoughts, Mark, on the future for external? Are you interested in engaging with more external groups? Do you think there is a power there for them in schools?
No, I think definitely. As I said at the start, I think children particularly now after COVID, need to have the quality exposure to the outside world. I think we're slowly getting back to normal in lots of ways. I think with having external people who are vibrant, enthusiastic, positive, life chances, aspiration is really helpful for kids at this particular moment in time. The schools do a fantastic job on a day-to-day basis, but having an interest, having an excitement in a life now is really, really important. We at Ormiston Academy have just had, we've been back for this our second week. We've had, I'm looking through my list, we had mental health champions in yesterday, went street to stadium, track and field, had Olympian in last week with 40, 50 kids at a time doing stuff which is really helpful for them and for us as a school. And we have a CCF contingency, and yesterday we had weapons training. We can't get the kids out to Woolwich at the moment, so they've been really flexible. The MOD have been really flexible, and we've got weapons handler trainer come in and speak to kids. I looked at it, and it was fantastic. The kids were so inspired by another person coming in and delivering some really quality training, in all those aspects. So at this particular moment in time, I think there's a real with schools, and again, thinking about a forum or a platform and a trust level would be most helpful for heads, because if there's a range of activities, I'm thinking mental health, sport, all kinds of things, safeguarding. Had Breck Foundation in one of my previous schools, or two of my previous schools as well, because Lauren Lefebvre delivers a really powerful, moving story which affects lives. It changes lives and it saves lives. So I thought myself, I need to have her into the schools I work in, because she's so powerful. So yeah, having that accessible in an easy way would be really beneficial, I think.
Thank you. A little bit longer than planned. Ndidi, I don't want to take up some of your time now. I think it would be right to ask you to say a few words about your focus today.
Yeah, no worries. That was really interesting. I obviously hadn't seen that either, and I learned a lot from that myself. So thank you for that. Okay, well, maybe here's the another piece of the jigsaw, as it were. I think I said at the very beginning that for me, so much of the work that we do, I think we typically default to schools being the only gatekeeper, if that makes sense, to young people, they aren't. But not only that, they don't have the capacity to be. And we heard some really powerful examples there of what would make it really easy for schools to engage, as opposed to just being individually bombarded with asks. And I actually think that head teacher was far more open and receptive than I've heard. I know in my experience, a lot of it is, I don't have capacity, stop it. I'm sure, all of us that have been teachers, you can think of the amount of leaflets and things you just went straight in a bin. Even if they were the solution, you just didn't have the capacity. And actually, if somebody could come and almost, one of the questions that I felt that I wasn't asked when I was a school leader was what's the problem you're trying to solve? It was often here's what we do and here's all the different ways, and actually it was left for me to try and navigate how that fits to what I'm doing. If the question started from a premise of what's going on for you and your kids, I just think the conversation would be very different. But anyway, the other side of the equation for me is what's happening for young people outside of schools, and how do we find a way of really bringing those two things together. So I wanted to just share two really quick examples of things that UK Youth are working on at the moment with partners, and then in our breakout group, anyone that wants to find out a bit more about those things can come into that space. So let me just present. Great. I'm hoping you can see that. Please someone scream if you can't. So working with schools and other sectors, that's the other bit. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is something called a youth card that I'm honestly really excited about. And I'm sure lots of people may have heard of lots of different ways that I think people have been trying to do this. But one of the things that, that makes me really excited by this is the connection it has to the European Youth Card, which is something already really strong out there. Lots of other European societies are effectively using it for young people, but also the connection to the Young Scot Card, which I think is a great UK example of this working. So the opportunity to kind of strategically partner on this was just incredible, and I think we were able to add what would have just been a single school routes focus in terms of the strategy. We were able to break that open to include sectors that work outside of schools as well. So what is the Youth Card? Essentially, it is a free mobile app that will be available to young people aged 11 to 25. And it really is about meeting young people where they are, and providing the access to the services and the support that they need, making it easier for young people to navigate through all the myriad of things that are available. We just heard how challenging it is for a school, for a young person. You can only imagine how much more complicated that is. So this is a really ambitious strategy that we're launching. You can see there that we're aiming to reach over 300,000 young people across England, Wales and Northern Ireland in the first 18 months. And we feel really confident about that based on the strategy. And this is really what it is. It's an access hub for young people. They download this app, and this connects them to services, opportunities, discounts, but work experience, apprenticeships, and the bit that we've brought to that is youth services. So a young person will be able to put in their address, and they will know what opportunities are available to them based on where they are. But again, the Young Scot example for me is so powerful, because what this also does is it actually ensures that young people who do have like the rights to some services, discounts, travel discounts, support, statutory support, it makes sure that they are aware of that in a way that I think is a much more personalized experience. So yeah, it kind of brings the world of discounts and services and opportunities with really servicing the development needs and of that young people may have. As I said, the partnership to be able to bring youth school services with youth services is for me the most powerful thing here. The way that it works is that it will work through the schools. Young people can sign up via their school, or they can sign up via their youth club, or they can sign up individually. But it will partner with the schools data and all of the kind of the data behind that young person in the way that obviously protects them, and we don't see any of that data, but it does enable services to be far less random and far more targeted. We have kicked off a pilot in Birmingham where we are testing this out from obviously England's kind of perspective, and we will be rolling it out nationally in the coming months as well. There you go. So that's the kind of the timeline. This has been co-created with young people. You've brought, schools around the table, youth organizations, governments, sectors are feeding in, businesses are feeding in. Like the opportunity to really bring people together with the young person at the core is really exciting. And as I said again, if you want to understand what this could be, look at Young Scot and understand the way that the Young Scot card has become almost embedded into the infrastructure of the country, so that young people are reached in all the capacities that they may need, and where there are disadvantages or where there are inequities, services can evolve and adapt to ensure that young people don't miss out. So if you want to get involved, I think it's just easier. You can please feel free to kind of reach out to me. You can join the breakout room. I'll give you a bit more detail there. But also I'm on Twitter or Instagram and Ndidi First. It's just far more easier for me to connect you to stuff there if you want to know more. The second thing I want to talk to you about is the I Will campaign. And there was a short video to play here, but I won't play it. I know we're running out of time. And really, the I Will campaign, I'm hoping most of you have heard about it. It's been going on for quite a few years now. And it really is about championing the role of young people today, and empowering them to engage in social action, to utilize their voice. And I think it's just an incredible way of unlocking the potential of young people above and beyond what might be happening for them in school. At the moment, I think there are about 300 I Will ambassadors who are kind of leading the charge. UK Youth have just taken over the kind of the coordination and the secretariat of this from Step Up to Serve. So we're working with Volunteering Matters to really lead the Step Up, the I Will campaign into its next chapter. And we're really looking for people to partner on this and to really figure out how you can, align what you are doing to this idea of youth social action, and what are the ways that you can get actively involved in championing the voice of young people's agency, not tomorrow, but today. They have value today. They have something to offer all of us today. And I think ultimately that's what is behind the I Will campaign. And that's it. I'll stop there. And as I said, if you want to find out a bit more about that, please join the breakout room. I would also really appreciate hearing people's input into those two things. They are definitely at development stage. And so if you've got ideas or things that you think, God, why aren't you thinking about doing that? I'm all ears to that as well.
Thanks, Ndidi. And we are unfortunately having to rush through a little bit more than we might have liked to. But I think we've got some breakout rooms now, and Tish and I were just liaising about that. I think, Ndidi, there's going to be a really exciting breakout room session that you're going to run, where you're exploring some of the themes and topics and that you've just touched on. And then I think there's going to be a number of other, perhaps smaller breakout rooms with 4 or 5 people, where you start to talk about your sales and marketing strategy. I've put in the chat a PowerPoint presentation with some notes, and also a Word document with the plan for the selling to schools breakout rooms. And just very briefly, that's going to ask you to go away for 20 minutes to consider your approach to sales and marketing into schools, and think about some of the key strategies that you might want to develop. Come back and then talk in that breakout group about things you might want to improve. And I think come back in 20 minutes to talk in an open session for the last 10-15 minutes with us about what some of the key learning for all of us has been. Tish, I'm not quite sure how you're going to allocate the groups, but it's really just probably 4 or 5 for the chats about sales and marketing strategy. How should we move forward?
Great. So if what I'm going to do is create the rooms in 1 second, but if I've understood correctly, Ndidi will host a room, and that will focus on working with young people at youth centres. So I'll make the rooms available so that people can join. So that will be room 1. So if you'd like to be with Ndidi, please pick room 1 and drop into that. And then there'll be another 4 or 5 rooms available. And I think James said around 4 to 5 people, and those rooms will focus on the sales and marketing. So if you drop into those groups.
Can I just clarify? So I'm going to very much focus mine on more on the youth card, and I will. So if you want to talk about those 2 projects, as opposed to working with youth centres, just so that I can be clear on that. Thanks.
I suppose the only thing to check is if everybody can open the Word document and the PowerPoint document that I've posted. That would probably be important to look at in the selling to schools breakouts. If you can't, I suppose maybe just let us know, and we'll try and put the details in the chat. Should we place people in rooms or get that started, Tish?
Yeah, great. So I'm going to open the rooms, but because we've got a bit of a mix of people choosing different things, it will be rooms that people have to choose into. So if you'd like to be with Ndidi, please pick room 1. And then for everyone else, if you can spread yourselves out between rooms 2 to 6. That would be fab. So I'll open them now. So if you
after that, but yeah, thank you for that. It was really great discussion from our end. James, and if you want to.
Well, interested to hear how your group went, but I think maybe could each group of someone from each group maybe volunteer something that they're really going to take away and think about from the brief session we really had this morning on some of these topics. Maybe group one, Roger, your group, was there something that
I think we were group one.
Oh, sorry, group two. Yeah, I think I was just talking to Roger and Lauren. Actually, you were in that group as well, weren't you? I think. Was there something that in the short time we had came out as a priority for improving sales and marketing for any of the groups?
I think, and add in please if I miss anything, but there was a really good discussion in our group around aligning to values and needs of the school, and also the kind of question around schools have these values, but what do they actually mean by them? So how can you actually then take what you can see online and what you can see through the website really easily and actually pitch a little bit differently according to that? And also there was a discussion around introductions to other schools through schools that are already working with and coordinating the approach from Multiacademy level, and kind of how that can be quite a dangerous thing, because if they say no, then maybe the other schools that's like your chance lost. So we had a good discussion around that as well.
Thank you. I mean, I'll only take a couple of minutes from our groups, Ndidi, to give you a few minutes on yours. But yeah, maybe group 2, 3, or 4, or 3, 4, and 5. Someone want to mention a couple of points that came up?
Hi, I'll come in from group 5.
Thanks.
I think 2 points stay in my mind from our group. One was Anna Louise was talking, and Mark also talking about how powerful the different teacher forums can be. So if a head teacher or a person you're working with in one school can at least make the forum aware of your organization, a little bit of an introduction, obviously a positive testimony, that can be good. It's very difficult for organizations obviously to get time or to get to attend forums because their agendas are very tight, and they don't usually allow outsiders in easily. So that's the first thing. Head teacher forums, maybe subject leader forums. And the second thing that Mark was mentioning was the maybe growing value of social media, connecting through social media, as there are younger teachers coming into schools that maybe might not use emails as much as the rest of us have in the past. Maybe it's time to rely a little bit more on Twitter and other social media.
Thank you, Helena. Ndidi, I think we've actually got slightly shorter time than I was aware of, but I think maybe, do you want to say something about your group, or someone from your group maybe reflect on what you talked about?
I mean, yeah, I'm opening up to the group. If there's any kind of reflection or takeaway that anyone wants to share, that'd be great.
You might have to pick on someone, Ndidi, that you know. But
I don't know. I had a chatty group. Come on, who's gonna? Oh, actually, I know who I'm gonna pick on. Where's she gone? I can't see her. You know who you are. Kalisa, where are you? I can't. Has she gone?
I don't mind saying something.
Oh, Shola, thank you.
Yeah. Actually, the group was very interesting. My only issue with it was that it was too short, and I really wanted to hear more about the I will as well, actually. But I can connect with you and find out more about that. What Ndidi was presenting feels quite revolutionary, in fact, in the sense that it's an app that looking at the presentation will really appeal to the young people. and at the same time will appeal to schools who care for the well-being and the interest of the young people. It's connecting the school's interests with the young people's interests, with the interests of organizations like mine and other third sector organizations out there who are all youth facing, and providing a real hub, if you like, in the young person's pocket that connects them to so many things. I'm going to stop there to give somebody else an opportunity to speak, but the only thing I will say is, where was that when I was a teenager?
Well, and so that was brilliant. Ndidi, I think we're going to have to wrap it up there, just to say that Ormiston Trust are massively behind the social action, priority massively. And I'd love to join a conversation with Ndidi and anyone that gets hold of you to join in to see where we could maybe work together on something. I think we're wrapping up, Ndidi. Thank you so much. Brought some joy and quality to the session. It was too short, but I hope to see you all very soon.
Great. Thank you so much to you both. Just a couple of things, I think, and just picking up from the conversations and the reflections from those groups. Firstly, when it comes to kind of that selling to schools and really thinking about that scaling and marketing track, really key is targeting and really thinking about kind of the gap we know in attainment is widening, and thinking about how organizations understanding the data, targeting, and knowing why they're working with schools is really important in being able to really communicate that well and develop your sales pipeline accordingly, so that we can all collectively close the gap and really make a difference for the pupils that need our support the most. And then secondly, on Ndidi and the youth card, very exciting developments with UK Youth and I Will. Moving on, and as I mentioned earlier in the chat, we will be working with UK Youth and Volunteer Matters to take on the education legacy of the I Will campaign, and so we'll be in touch quite soon to talk about the next kind of stages of bringing those groups together that are interested in youth engagement and youth social action in regards to education soon. So please do look out for messages around that coming in the bulletin soon, and let us know if you want to connect sooner. So just to let you know that we will very soon be launching a poll to get your opinion. Your opinion to us is really important, and we'd love to get your feedback both through reflections of the poll, but if you have anything else that you would like to share, please do share it with us on fea.events@faireducation.org.uk. But it will take a few seconds to complete that poll. You'll see it popping up on your screen with an option to participate. We've got some coming through already, thank you. And some thanks coming through in the chat as well for Ndidi and James for a brilliant session to start us off on a Friday morning. Just to let you know of some sessions that we have coming up. We've got a brilliant session straight on from this. If you're interested in impact and evidence, we have a session run by the Education Endowment Foundation on evidence and impact as you scale. Then later this afternoon, we have a session led by Liz Robinson of Big Education on the leadership of the head, heart and hand. So please do join us if you can for those sessions. Next week, we've got a lot of brilliant sessions to come, so do have a look at the timetable. But some you might be available or interested in. A session on embedding youth engagement in your organisations on Monday, so very pertinent to some of the conversations that have been taking place this week, where we will get to hear from two of the I Will ambassadors, along with Lottery and Bite Back. And then on Wednesday, some sessions on bringing enrichment opportunities and real world experiences to all. So just having a look at that poll now. That's brilliant, that's finished. Thank you very much for taking part in that. And before we log off, I would like to ask us all to come off mute and give James and Ndidi a big round of applause.
Thank you, everyone. That's very nice.
So thank you both so much, and thank you all for joining us. Please do tweet about the connections that you've made and connect following the session as well. We've put a link in the chat to the attendee list with some email addresses and social handles. So please do take on these conversations beyond this room. Thank you very much, and we see